Hello, everyone. Our next battle of the day is solutions to bringing down the cost of electricity, something that we all deal with in terms of we all get a bill. And it matters very much because electricity affects how much our water costs, and the cost of energy affects how much it costs to drive, how much it costs to move, basically anything you want to do in the world. Electricity and the cost of energy matters. First, our introductions of our lovely panel. In this corner, well, in the center corner, we have Bill Powers. And Bill Powers is a registered professional engineer with extensive knowledge and experience in the fields of energy and environmental engineering. He represents Public Power San Diego, a group that formed that is trying to replace San Diego Gas and Electric with a publicly owned electric utility. We have Kellie Smith. She comes to us from Sacramento, where she worked over 40 years at California State Capitol, and she played a central role in shaping and implementing the state's critical energy policies. She served as chief consultant to the utilities and energy committees for both state assembly and state senate, and negotiated with governors, the legislature, and stakeholders to advance some of the biggest policies in California's energy landscape. And last but not least, we have Jack McGrory. Jack worked for the city of San Diego for 23 years, where he served as city manager from 91 through 97. Then he became president and CEO of Price Enterprises, Inc., and was chief operating officer of the San Diego Padres. He was president of the subsidiary responsible for building Petco Park and the adjacent commercial development. And we invited San Diego Gas and Electric, which selected Jack to share his presentation on their behalf. But he has told me he will bring his own opinions as well to bear. So, of course, we're an education organization, so I wanted to quickly educate you about electricity rates. I'm sure these folks will do so as well. But San Diego has some of the most expensive electricity in the nation, typically second only to Hawaii. Sometimes we battle it out for the top spot. I've written extensively about this issue, including a really nice guide to everything that's on your electricity bill. If you want to take a look at that story, it will explain what all those little charges are that you have to pay for every month. But you'll see in the news lately that electricity is a growing problem nationwide, even globally. You're starting to see headlines, electricity, it's growing, the price is growing exponentially. Trump promised lower electricity rates. What's going on? And so for California, basically anywhere you pay for an energy bill, what you're paying for are these three basic elements here. You have the generation, which can come in the form of solar panels or like natural gas power plant. You have the transmission lines, which are these big, large, poles and wires that you see crossing desert landscapes that bring energy to the distribution lines, which are the smaller poles and wires that get energy to your home. And you'll see here, distribution is a very large portion of your bill, and that's largely because, there's a lot that the utilities do or are required to do by the state to prepare and protect us against wildfire, which has a lot to do with those types of poles and wires. And so, that's part of it. And you'll see here in California, all the blue is investor-owned utilities. That's the portion of the state covered by an investor-owned utility or privately owned utility like San Diego Gas and Electric. And the others we do have some public ones. Specifically, there's one in Sacramento where Kellie Smith lives, and maybe she'll talk to you about that. And so that is kind of the landscape there in brief. And kind of the tension that's been going on in San Diego lately is there was a push by groups like Bill Powers' group to try and get the city of San Diego to get rid of SDG&E and replace it with a public power company. But the city of San Diego in the end decided to recut a contract with SDG&E, which goes on for 10 years, and then they have a chance to potentially re-up that contract or make a change. So this is a particularly relevant topic here for us today. So without further ado, I'm going to start with Jack McGrory with your presentation. His solution is many things, and he will explain that to you. I am looking for the clicker. So
maybe I get to do this myself.
Or I can help you if you would. You like
a little scary.
I got it.
I just said click.
Yeah. That's fine. Yeah, just let me know when to switch,
I think anybody over 70 years old shouldn't be given a clicker. Not a good thing. It's a pleasure to be here. The last time I was here was representing San Diego State against my friends from Soccer City, and luckily that worked out fairly well. Thank you, Scott. I do want to make one editorial comment for somebody who's been through the scars of city government and civic issues, and that is the job that Voice of San Diego does. I mean, they have filled a tremendous vacuum. Obviously, print media has been on the downhill. We don't get much coverage anymore. It's hard to believe when I was city manager, there were 3 full newspapers. The LA Times San Diego edition, the Tribune in the afternoon, and the Union in the morning. There were 5 full-time reporters in City Hall. I couldn't go to the bathroom without running into a reporter. The local section was a minimum of 10 pages long. Sometimes it was 15 pages long. Every issue, every story got covered. And so when I see today, without the Voice, we wouldn't really have any coverage at all. And I spent 8 years on the Cal State University Board of Trustees, and Cal Matters is just a fantastic publication. They're objective. They always make sure the quotes are right. Their coverage of public policy is just fantastic. So I think we've got two great media outlets here. I've got many conflicts of interest up here today, which I should disclose. I am not being paid by SDG&E. In fact, I've had more battles with SDG than I've had friendships with SDG&E over the years. But they did ask me to present this from this issue from a public policy viewpoint, which I'm glad to do, and they obviously helped me with the slides. I am a contributor to Scott and the Voice of San Diego, so I've got it on both sides here. But I do want to just kind of go through the slides and kind of point out some of the major issues. I think you've already done a good job, MacKenzie, of hitting some of them, but let's go ahead with the first one. San Diego, and I've got 5 kids. Only one of them is here. This place is a damn expensive place to live. And all of you who have children realize most of them leave. They can't afford it. They go to places where they can buy a house and they can live much more comfortably. If you look at our gas prices, you can see the tank on the right. California gas prices are ridiculously high. It's hard for me to believe because I think we've got about half the refineries in the country right here, but they're still incredibly expensive. Our water and sewer rates are off the chart. I looked it up the other day. The 50 largest cities, San Diego is in the top 3 for water rates, and that's before you calculate in a 61% increase that the council is thinking about over the next 4 years. And I think one of the problems, just as a quick aside, one of the problems I think we have is we have this balkanization of public policy. A lot of different agencies make policy, and that's what's happened, I think, with water. Everybody is making a different kind of policy, and they're all not coordinated, and they're driving up the price of water between the desalination plant, imported water, the cost of all of the infrastructure that these different agencies are laying on us. It's just really expensive. And then if you look at trash, I don't know if there's any council members here, but I've been here a long time. I haven't seen quite the debacle that the trash situation has generated. When I was city manager, I completely agreed with the public policy that the trash, we should be paying for trash. We're the only city in California that wasn't paying for it. But when somebody tells me you're going to pay $23 to $26 a month for trash, and then you do some kind of a $5 million study, and you come back and tell me it's $45, and you've cut some secret deal with the union that you can't compete it out with the private sector, something's drastically wrong. And so now we're going to have the highest trash fees. And hopefully the courts will step in and say, this is ridiculous. You can't promise one thing and deliver something else. And then you look at parking. I mean, usually with parking, you gradually increase parking rates. I mean, that would be kind of how I would do it, but we didn't do that. We're just doubling rates and moving along. Okay, click. In terms of the overview here, this is how a bill looks in San Diego. If you look at the top, 24% are legislative mandates, 30% is the electric commodity, 32% is distribution, 15% is transmission. The only part of that bill that SDG&E actually controls is distribution and transmission. So they only control 47% of the bill. If you look at legislative mandates, and I'm used to this now that I'm involved in higher education with the state, the legislature really doesn't like to pay for things out of the general fund. They find ways to tack it on to other kind of things. So if you look at legislative mandates, they cover everything from food bank subsidies to help for lower income folks. There's just a whole bunch of things that get bundled into that 24%. The commodity is provided by CCA. It's not controlled by SDG&E, and you can't make a profit off the commodity. So it's whatever that commodity costs when it comes into the county that we're going to pay. And we can pay, we do obviously, SDG&E covers distribution and transmission, and I think that's where the debate will come with Bill. Click. If you look at the mandates, you can see that how they break down. 14% is renewable, the renewable energy. They are not relying on electricity as much as they used to. They produce wind and solar, SDG&E does, and that goes into the bundle of energy. They're spending 11% of the bill on wildlife mitigation to try to reduce the fires that we had. Everybody remembers the 2007 fire, and that generated this effort to try to underground more wires, increase the vegetation control around high tension wires. And then public purpose programs. It's hard for me to believe that we're paying for the food bank out of the SDG&E bill, but this is how the legislature does budgeting. It's very mysterious. It's not responsible. Instead of all of these bills that are in this public purpose should be in the general fund. But the general fund has such pressure on it in Sacramento that the legislature finds ways to unload these programs to other special funds, such as the ratepayers. And then the California climate is a way we get capping trade credits, and that goes to lowering our bills. Okay, next. Here's some of the things that have been done by SDG&E to try to lower the rate and be more responsible. They have taken, they've earned $200 million in federal tax credits by having battery storage and renewable projects, so they can save energy and use it and not at save energy at non-peak times and use it at peak times. They have reduced the costs of strategic undergrounding by getting smarter at it. They've reduced that cost by 50%. And they are trying to save $300 million by getting rid of non-cost effective energy programs. Next. That's the next. Yeah, we have one more slide that we'll use later on. But overall, I think the utility has limited control over their bills. As you can see, it's less than half. I think they have taken seriously their responsibilities in terms of wildfire and trying to make the bills lower than they are. Obviously, they are a private utility, and they have to earn a 7% return for their investors. But I think overall they have done a reasonable job, from my perspective, in trying to control the bills that they have.
Okay, thank you very much. The next presentation will be by Bill Powers. And his solution, very simply, is go with public power, obviously. Would you like the clicker, Bill? Or are you going to go?
I'll stand up for you. You can click.
Up to you.
Okay. You can click.
Okay.
First of all, I want to thank Voice of San Diego for inviting me to be a part of this panel. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
A little louder, please.
Okay. Little louder, right here. Okay, well, let's get started. How many of you dread opening your SDG&E bill each month? How many trust SDG&E to get us out of this affordability crisis? I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. I think it only gets better permanently if we go to a not-for-profit public electric utility. How much profit is SDG&E making a day delivering electricity to San Diego? Take a guess. One closer.
Yeah, or handheld, but
Handheld might be better. $1 million a day. So who pays a $300 a month electricity bill here, approximately? $60 of that bill is going off the top to SDG&E as profit. It's 20% profit. $700 a year. Who pays $500 a month? Anyone pay $500 a month? Okay, $500 a month. $100 a month is profit to SDG&E, or $1,200 a year. How much profit would a not-for-profit public electric utility make delivering electricity to you, us, per day? They would make $0 a day in profit. Well, let's talk about pay. Public power would eliminate sky-high executive pay. As an example, the highest paid executive I'm aware of in public utility in California, CEO of Sacramento Municipal Utility District, he makes $1 million a year. How many of you make $1 million a year? No hands. That's pretty good pay. SDG&E CEO last reported publicly in 2020, $11 million, excuse me, I said a day, $11 million, $1 million a year. The CEO SDG&E, $11 million a year in 2020, more than that now. Eliminating that profit and excessive pay creates plenty of space to buy SDG&E's assets in the city and to reduce rates. So if you can take a look at this graphic, that rapidly rising blue curve is where rates are headed with SDG&E. That red solid curve down below, that's where rates would be headed if we were a public electric utility. Those two dashed lines in the middle, and that spread between those two solid lines is tens of billions of dollars greater than what the city projected in its municipalization study. Those two dashed lines are what the city projected in its municipalization study, much less savings with municipal power. We'll go next slide. So public power is a common improvement model in California. We have over 40 public electric utilities in the state. Their hallmark: lower rates, high reliability, good customer service, fast interconnection. More importantly, they are under local control. We do not have that with SDG&E. Let's take a look at the map, and the green tags are public utilities. The red tag is SDG&E. Let's go first up north, Sacramento Municipal Utility District. And these numbers here are residential rates 2025 for the same amount of electricity, 750 kilowatt hours a month. Sacramento, 19 cents a kilowatt hour. Just by chance, Sacramento Municipal is about the same size as we would be as a city of San Diego public power entity. 19 cents compared less than half what we pay here, 48 cents a kilowatt hour. And that's pretty typical. On average, California public electric utilities, their rates are less than half SDG&E's rate. So looking at that number, SMUD, the difference between the two, $145 a month in SMUD territory, $330 for the same amount of the same product in San Diego. That's a $2,200 a year difference in how much you pay for electricity. Let's go to Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, which has top pay in the state for workers, 28 cents a kilowatt hour compared to 48 cents per kilowatt hour in San Diego, 40% less cost than here in San Diego. Next. So let's take a look at California's biggest cities. Where do they stand? Los Angeles, yes, they have it. Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. Sacramento, yes, Sacramento Municipal Utility District. San Francisco, yes and no. They have it for public buildings. They have it for electrified public transportation. They do not have it for homes and businesses. However, the city of San Francisco has offered to buy out the for-profit private monopoly PG&E grid in town for $2.5 billion so that they can become a complete public electric utility. That effort is a work in progress. San Diego lags behind. We are the only one of these big cities that is served exclusively by a for-profit private monopoly utility, San Diego Gas and Electric. Next. There's a strong union presence in these bigger California public utilities. Back to Los Angeles, LADWP, more than 80% of the employees are union, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and additional smaller unions. Imperial Irrigation District to the east, over 60% union, IBEW. Sacramento Municipal, 50% union, predominantly IBEW. And then SDG&E, only 30% union, lagging behind in union membership in these bigger public utilities. Next. So let's talk about our city charter here in San Diego. Yes, we may own and operate a public electric utility. We can also farm it out. We could do a franchise agreement, which we have done for a very long time, to a third party that is San Diego Gas and Electric. The charter also allows us to terminate a franchise agreement whenever it is, between quotes, in the welfare of the city to do it. But there is a better time to do it, which is when the franchise agreement expires. The next date where that will happen, or at least the opportunity will occur, is in 2021, 5 years from now, where our city council will have to make a decision whether to terminate SDG&E and go with public power, potentially, or to continue on another 10 years with SDG&E. Next. So a public electric utility in San Diego would need the experienced workers that are currently SDG&E continue using their skills at the new public utility. The skill, the training, the professionalism that they have would be essential to reliable operations of that utility. No one other than the overpaid executives would be out of work. Next slide. So this table shows the results of a third-party poll that was conducted during the Public Power Ballot Initiative campaign last year that I led. And we'll take a look at it. Democrats in favor, public power, 2/3, Republicans, nearly half. In aggregate, 60% of those polled were in favor of public power. Why? Nobody likes getting ripped off. People are ready for a change. Next. We will need a good plan to get the most out of public power in San Diego. 2 primary lessons learned from the campaign and subsequent talks in the community. San Diegans are skeptical of the city's ability to handle this, and union and community involvement is critical to the success of public power. The public utility will need autonomy and should not be a city department. Governance should have union presence, consumer presence, expert presence for credibility with the community. And this is a work in progress. In sum, public power is a proven model in California. Dozens of cities have it. We can do it too. It means low rates in place of high profits. It means we can chart our own path. It's also an opportunity to lead the state and the nation with a new vision. Local control, local power. I encourage you to visit the Public Power of San Diego website and learn more about the potential for public power in the city. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll give you, yeah, no problem. Next, we have Kellie Smith. Want to take this mic, Kellie?
Oh, sure. Thank you.
There you go.
Where's my clicker? Right here. Oh. Okay. So unfortunately, I go last, and so I'm gonna like zip through some of these slides and then not cover some of it and go off slide because some of the issues have already been covered, and I think I might be able to elaborate on a few things. So let me first say, I am a happy SMUD customer, and when my husband and I got married, I made it very clear we are never leaving. unless we leave the state. So it is a wonderful model. They are doing a tremendous job. They have not always done that. We had a huge debacle in the 80s over a nuclear power plant, which has since been resolved, and fortunately, they are on track. But nevertheless, yes, generally public power is a better way to go. If we were designing a system in California today, assuming we didn't have to deal with the politics of it, it would be public. And as you may recall, in 2019, PG&E went bankrupt. And during that bankruptcy, there were discussions about how to take that territory public. It was a desire among many. There was a window of opportunity, and it was determined not to be feasible. And that's a whole other discussion. So really what's happening now, we have a 20, and so I'm going to focus a little bit more on the challenges of trying to take an IOU to a POU. And remember, I think it's a great model, but at the end of the day, I'm trying to look at rates. I spent my entire career in the legislature on this issue, and you can go back year after year after year on my committee analyses and the conversations I had with members, and anybody else there will tell you, oh yeah, she told us so. And I kept saying, so what about this cost? One of my chairs was now federal Senator Alex Padilla, not contrasted with your local state Senator Alex Padilla. And Alex and I worked hard to try to incorporate the cost of legislative actions on utility policy before adoption. We lost. The only cost consideration that happens in the legislative arena is how many staff it will take at the Energy Commission or the PUC to do something. And that does not even begin to reflect the cost on ratepayers. And so we still have this 20th century model, vertical integration of regulating the utilities. But since that time, we've now moved into this 21st century. We have an independent system operator that manages the transmission system. We have electricity rate components that have a ton of costs built in. You only see a fraction of them on your bill. You can go to the PUC's website and type in AB 67 report, and you will see pages and pages of costs that are embedded in those bills. So let me go down. So remember, anytime somebody talks about affordability, I want to remind them about the balloon. Because if you squeeze that balloon and you make it cheaper for one group, it's going to be more expensive for another. And that's part of what a lot of ratepayers are feeling right now. Yes, the food banks get a discount on their electric rate. So what happens? Somebody else is paying more. And rooftop solar customers, there's a lot of people out there who pay nothing right now. But at 8 o'clock and at midnight, they're still pulling electricity from the grid and using it. They don't pay anything either. We do a huge discount for low-income customers, appropriately so, but that means other people and other businesses and industries pay more. So there's always a cost shift. What's on a bill, that's been discussed a bit. And then remember I said what's behind the bill. Built into those distribution rates, a ton of different charges, a ton, not just what you've seen on the bill. So generation, people say electric rates. Well, it's really the generation rate. That's under the jurisdiction of the PUC, except for now we have CCAs and energy service providers. Far more than 60% of the electricity used in the territories of the IOUs are provided by an entity other than the IOUs today. Distribution, all jurisdictional. Remember I said not just about the wires because there's a lot of other stuff built into that. Transmission system, all FERC jurisdictional, all federal, costs and everything else, the profit, all controlled by FERC. And these days it's going to get worse. So unique IOU cost impacts. a lot of focus. I was a little surprised about, and I'll look into it, Bill's number on 30% at San Diego. I know at least most of the IOUs have wall-to-wall labor, and it is more expensive. They have great pensions, they have great benefits, and their employees do great work. The IOUs have a mandate to serve anyone, anywhere. If they have to build the distribution line for 50 miles, they did, out in the middle of nowhere. And when it snows and those lines snap, they got to go out and fix them, no matter where they are and when it is, and everybody else pays for that. When there is a wildfire caused by the utility or not, and in this case, not caused by the utility and all the ratepayers pay for that. If there was a wildfire not caused by a utility's negligence in a publicly owned utility, FEMA pays for that cost. They do make a profit. We all know the profit, except on the sale of costs. And so I got to hurry because now I have 5 minutes. Grid hardening, wildfire is a big deal. When people talk about the costs and electric rates in the POUs in Southern California, not Northern California, and across the country, we have no coal. San Diego hasn't had coal for years. Edison hasn't had coal for years, and neither has PG&E. It cost us all more money. LADWP is still importing coal to this state today from Utah. They are working on getting rid of it, but they, along with other municipal utilities in Southern California, have coal power. There's a cost to all of that. And there are a lot of legacy costs. This state built renewables. I don't have any numbers to support this, but I believe that California built renewable green energy for the world. In 2005, 6, 7, when we did the mandate on rooftop solar, there was nothing. It was really expensive. And ratepayers subsidized that market transformation. Renewable portfolio standard after the energy crisis. Then member Byron Scher said, we got to do something. We can't just rely on gas. And so we instituted a RPS mandate, and it grew and it grew. And now we have the strongest renewable generation fleet in the country. Consequently, we have legacy costs. Because when the utilities went out and they developed the market for batteries, there was nothing. There was no batteries out there. My fuzzy recollection, don't quote me on this, but I'm saying it publicly, so somebody will. My fuzzy recollection is that in the late aughts, like 7, 8, 9, 10, there was 300 megawatts of solar called the Luz project down here in the eastern part of that. Bill may remember where it is, out on the border near Arizona. 300 megawatts of solar, that was it. And a whole bunch of crappy old wind mills that were generating a pathetic amount of electricity. They look like windmills. They don't look like turbines today. We had nothing. We paid for that. We're still paying for that. That's why the CCA rates are lower. The CCAs come in because they can go out and buy power now that was built on the backs of the costs of which were built and subsidized by all of the IOU ratepayers. Even the POUs, they sat back and they said, yeah, well, this RPS stuff, it's going to be a mandate. We're going to wait and we're going to go buy it as soon as the IOUs go buy it and start a big market and bring the costs down. And so we're all still paying for those legacy costs. Quickly on POU formation. Good, in theory, yes. In practice, you have to have a willing seller on those lines. And you can't have, and it's getting closer to be technically possible to have a utility service in an area, some people might call it a microgrid, and not be connected to lines anyplace. But they're not there yet. You cannot find a microgrid in this state, likely not, that is truly disconnected from the grid and doesn't rely on diesel-powered backup generators. So when you start talking about, you have to have a willing seller of those lines, and there isn't a utility that's going to do it yet. You have to use eminent domain. The legal requirement is you have to show a public necessity, and then you have to show the proposed use is a more necessary public use. And then if you get through all of that, you have to pay the utility what they're owed for those lines. I talked about legacy costs. The CCAs have to pay legacy costs when they take customers away for which the utility already entered into long-term contracts. And so finally, attempts. SMUD went muni, but that was in 1940. There was a failed attempt some years ago that got rejected by voters in our local area. South San Joaquin Irrigation District up in PG&E territory has been trying to get a hold of those wires for over 20 years and is still in court on eminent domain. So what's my thought? You have to get rid of that old regulatory system from the last century. You have to come in, you have to clear the deck. Get rid of all of those mandates, everything that's buried at the PUC. It takes the PUC years to do anything to help anybody. They are doing what they are legally required to do. That is not a criticism. It's a relic of the last century. And if we're in a climate crisis, treat it like that. Stop letting every single, group of 10 people or 3 corporations come in and say, we've got a better way of doing this. Just let the market do it. Go out and find the best GHG value for the buck, work on safety, work on reliability, and move on, because it will be forever until we can actually get to a POU formation, unfortunately. Okay.
Thank you very much. Yes. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. So we're going to get to your questions. We're going to have 20 minutes of debate. Download or open this app because you're going to want to either send us questions, which I'm populating right now. I can ask the panel, and then also we'll have the voting on this app as well. But so let's turn now to some discussion. So as I see it, the 3 solutions are, SDG&E's proposal is sort of get rid of these public purpose programs. And maybe you can highlight a couple of the other, we can maybe bring up your slide again,
Yeah.
But get rid of public purpose programs. What was the other 2?
The solar switch.
But now,
The NEM. Yeah. And then we have make a public utility, basically. And we have everybody just focus on creating, going out and getting the cleanest energy at the cheapest rate, and just kind of like as Kelly said, clear the deck, and we can talk more about that. Could each of you answer? I mean, I don't know, Kelly, if you have this kind of a number off the bat, but if your solution were to win, how much could you drop rates today? Let's say we went with you. Do you know per kilowatt hour? Because we know how high our rates are. We're pretty much the highest in the country. So do you have an answer for that?
Just to clarify, the rates are extremely high. The bills are about average. We use less electricity here in San Diego because of the climate than most other places do. But I just want to hit 3 quick points.
Okay.
1, do you actually trust the city council of this city to take over the electric grid? Remember, you're using your computers, your lights, all of your technology. You trust these guys? They're $8 billion in the hole on infrastructure maintenance. You can't drive on a goddamn city street without ruining your tires. You want them now to take over your electricity? But that'd be my first point on this. This hasn't happened, as Kelly said, in decades. It takes forever in the bureaucracy of the state of California to accomplish this. Boulder tried it. They did. They're not in California, but they're the last city that tried it. 10 years, they wasted $30 million, and they finally quit. I mean, it is going to be a struggle beyond. It takes so much energy to do that. And then again, what's it going to cost to do this? You have to take the city of San Diego inside the county and make it an island for electricity. So you have to have transformers and substations all around the city measuring the electricity that's coming in here, because now we're going to be separate from the rest of the county. The cost of that is supposed to be $9 billion. I know Bill, fellow Irishman from Boston, he's got a different number than I do.
I have a different number.
Of course. But there are numbers out there. They're all very, very big. To do this is going to take a lot of money. A lot of attorneys going to make a lot of money. It's going to take a hell of a long time. And in the end, do you want the city council to run your electricity system?
Yeah, thank you. I think just a few fact checks there. I think part of the reason that Boulder struggled is because, there's not a willing, typically investor-owned utility that just says, sure, we would love to sell you our wires and poles, which is basically our profit-making center. And so if there was a willing utility, maybe that that time period of like how long it takes to potentially take over a utility would be shorter, correct? Right. But my question was just from your slide, does SDG&E have an idea how much rates would drop if we got rid of the things that SDG&E wants to get rid of?
You put that one slide
Kelly might have a response.
Right here.
I can tell you.
No, one more, Scott.
Is that?
No, the one with the 24, it starts out with 24%.
That?
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, if you took a look at the left, you would dump 24% the legislative mandates.
Is that not wildfire mitigation? There's a profit making off of wildfire mitigation.
You don't.
I'll let Kathy answer that then.
The net energy metering, remember the balloon? So you're not eliminating any costs here. Now on the net energy metering.
Can you explain what that is for people just really briefly?
The legacy of solar, we don't do it that way anymore, but the early adopters transforming a market, really good idea, but then it never stopped. And so there's a rate structure in place that needs revision, and we could spend hours on that.
But there are specific things that would be eliminated. For example, one of the things that you mentioned, the whole cost shift, we are picking up the non-solar users are picking up the cost of the grid for the solar users.
I agree.
That's 14%.
I got to step in here. I was an expert witness in the proceeding. There is no cost shift. We took this to the Supreme Court. We won in August. That we get a shot at talking about this cost shift. This is total industry propaganda.
No, I'm sorry.
This cost shift. We save money by putting solar and storage in San Diego. We save money by not paying these ridiculous transmission access charges we pay to SDG&E.
Bill, I agree. The NEM issue, actually, the August decision of the Supreme Court sent it back down. But I don't think that we could spend hours on NEM. But let's just, for the purpose of what he presented, it was well known. And I can give you every one of my committee analyses for years saying, this is costing other people more money, but that cost doesn't go away. It could shift and it could provide some relief. Actually, I would suggest that all of these things could be done at the same time.
You're not going to subsidize the food bank. I mean, some of these things are ridiculous.
Jack, the food bank is not getting any money from the utility.
It's
they're
a
getting
rate discount.
Pennies through charitable giving. That is nothing. It is nothing.
But let's talk
We are
about
paying
solutions.
a massive amount of money for boondoggle after boondoggle on transmission and distribution we don't need. We could have put for hundreds of millions of dollars, we could have solved the wildfire problem in East County that we're pouring money into with solar and storage on 30,000 homes and businesses. Instead, this has been turned into a world-class boondoggle where we are just pouring money, more and more money into underground.
Okay, wait a second.
Yeah.
Emotional and real problem. I have just finished working on a contract with the Eaton fire victims. I had family and friends who lost their homes and their communities in the Camp Fire.
I'm not talking about Eaton.
I'm
about
talking-
San Diego.
Let's
I know,
let
but what I'm
everybody finish their
saying is-
thoughts so we can each hear.
What I'm pointing out to you is to please proceed cautiously on that. I have seen the constant rhetoric about the wildfire costs, and I was there when San Diego did a lot of that. And I remember being in the room and saying, I think you guys are going way too far. And they are doing things that are duplicated by other agencies. But I want to point out to you of critical importance. You haven't had a fire since 2007 that was anything like the fires that continue to happen across the other IOU territories. And when those happen, drive through one of those areas. It is chilling. 9,000 structures in the Altadena area. Dead people. Edison started that fire. If they didn't, they wouldn't have a website up right now that's paying all damages, including fatalities. Same thing with Camp Fire. And so I agree. There's caution about those costs, but you haven't had a fire here
But you don't spend
since
billions.
'07.
You don't
Okay, Bill,
spend
now-
billions to underground because of utility incompetence. That's
PG
not why you do it.
There are statistics that show if you look at the cost of undergrounding in the context of a 3 or 4 year rate case, and you compare the cost of undergrounding to the costs of cutting trees and doing vegetation management for 10 years, it is now shown that it is cheaper to underground in the long run. And the legislature fought undergrounding for a number of years until this data about the cost of vegetation management came in.
Let's bring it back to
Yeah, let's bring it back.
the question at hand. What to do to actually bring down the cost of electricity. And so we talked about undergrounding, which is, I thought, the most expensive thing that a utility can do in terms of wildfire mitigation. And on top of that, IOUs do make a profit off of that. And so I guess like what, if you could talk about, Bill, can you put this in terms of like what people want to know? Can you bring down the cost of energy per kilowatt hour with your solution in the long run?
Two-part answer. And full disclosure, I have been an expert
Get
witness.
closer to the mic, Bill. We can't hear you.
Full disclosure, I've been an expert witness in dozens of California Public Utilities Commission proceedings with San Diego Gas and Electric. I have seen how the hamburger gets made at the commission. They win just about every time. It doesn't matter what the testimony is. But this issue of let's go back to cost and just going with our city's municipalization study that really slowed us down when it came out, because what it said was, well, municipalization, maybe in the best of cases, would be somewhat of a benefit, maybe not a benefit. I had to sue the city to get the model to examine what they did. And when I could see what they did and put in real numbers, we would save a tremendous amount of money, tens of billions of dollars more than what the city projected. And in that model, when it's used correctly to optimize it, we could save 20% the first year. Now, this issue of, yes, is it a struggle to do a condemnation proceeding and actually force SDG&E to sell the assets? It is. But in that municipalization study, the consultant Nugent said, okay, it's in the charter. That's what we do. It's probably going to take 3+ years. Okay, it's going to take 3+ years. We'll use that as an estimate. It's not impossible, but you have to be committed to doing it.
Go ahead, Kelly.
And I think that here's the difference here. I'm not suggesting if San Diego wants to pursue that, but in the meantime, while that work is being done, he's right. There is a mess at the PUC. They've got this old model, and I can write the script for you on the next rate case decision that's going to come from the PUC. X utility asked for 15%. Oh, but we only gave them 11%, or something like that. And one of the reasons is there are good people at the PUC and they are working hard, but they are overwhelmed. And part of the reason, a big reason is because the legislature has piled all these mandates on them and study and report and on and on and on. And they have dedicated a boatload of staff to, a proceeding on something that when the legislature passed it was supposed to be a year or two, and 6 and 7 years later, it's still going. And this happens time and time and time again. That's why I said clear the deck, dedicate all those staff to doing the deep dive on those rate cases. There is a lot of garbage still in the rates of all 3 IOUs.
And by rate cases, you mean what the utilities file
Right.
every 4 years, is
Right.
it now? Which basically tells
Yes.
the CPUC, hey, SDG&E wants to do X amount of work. And the CPUC says, okay, we'll rubber stamp this, this, and this. And also here's a bunch of other mandates you have to do. Can you talk more about?
Well, I'm not even going to say it's rubber stamping, but they come in and they say, okay, well, this is what you're asking us to do. Because remember, we don't know what it costs before they're told to do it. So they say, okay, well, we had to go out, and they're still providing electricity to some customers. And so we have to provide this electricity. We have this NEM program. We've got the self-generation incentive program. We have to help with heat pumps. We have to do all these EV things. And so they give a big list of stuff, and they say, this is what it's going to cost us to do this. Their profit case is a different case. This is what it's going to cost us we need X number of percent increase. Edison just, I think, got 11 or 15 or something recently. Well, they don't have enough staff. The PUC's down to bare bones. Those rate cases are so large. I don't even think that the utilities can put them on the PUC website. So if you go to the PUC, they'll refer you to the IOU website because it's got the capacity. I can't even dig into those things and figure out which end is up. And so it's that deep dive to really get in there and clean it out.
Go ahead, Jack.
Two things. Dump the social mandates. Electric bills should be paid. It should be used to pay for electricity, not all the damn problems that the legislature likes to dream up. Two, shift the cost of the grid back to the solar users. Everybody should pay their fair share of maintaining this grid. Nobody should get a free ride.
I think utilities have been successful in that, have they not? With NEM, the cost shift has changed a little bit back onto the solar ratepayers.
For new customers.
For new customers.
Solar installs.
Yeah, Bill, go ahead.
I have to make a point here that the investor-owned utilities, including San Diego Gas and Electric, look at solar and storage on someone's home or business as kryptonite. And it is, because this business model is built around capital expansion, transmission, distribution. It's a one-trick pony. That's how we solve every problem. You put solar and storage on your home, you're pulling load off the grid, you're reducing any rationale for transmission and distribution. They could have gone a different way, found a way to adapt new technology to now and the future. They've decided to double down on the past. And the political power is tremendous to hold back a better future.
Kellie, can you? The other criticism of rooftop solar, I think one of your tenets of public power is, use the money that otherwise would have been profit going to SDG&E and reinvest that in the community to try to put solar on every rooftop. Is that kind of the gist?
Well,
partially?
Exactly. Part of it is just part of it is pointing out that if 20% of your bill is profit and we get rid of the profit, we've got 20% to work with to drop rates. It was really more rates. But on the other side, on the power supply side, we in San Diego pay the highest transmission access charges in the state, 4, 5, 6 cents a kilowatt hour. We can put solar on commercial buildings like Target and Costco for less than that. So why pay these high transmission charges when, if we are a municipal utility and we can put that solar in our city on the low side of the transformers or the transmission substations you're talking about, Jack, we don't pay any of those fees. And this PCIA fee, we don't necessarily pay that fee either. And the wildfire fees. Have you seen firestorms starting in the city of San Diego? No, they start out in the backcountry and they come in. So we would have to sort out how much responsibility do we have for that? But what we might do is say, stop undergrounding those lines back there. Stop the incredibly expensive covered conductors. Give the handful of people out there solar and storage. You can shut those lines off whenever you want to. It's fine.
Can you kind of talk again about your clearing the deck idea? Just because I want to understand what you're basically saying both public and private utilities should do under this sort of climate crisis situation, because there's also that we need to address as part of this electricity problem.
Well, the publicly owned utilities actually have more latitude in the work they do. They were successful over the years. For instance, they don't have to provide a net metering program like the IOUs have to do. They only have to provide a credit on customer bills for the electricity that's generated, and they get to count that electricity toward their RPS requirements. The IOUs have to give what's called a full retail credit, and that's where the cost shift comes in. Because remember, at noon, that sun comes up and that solar's producing electricity, but what happens at 5 o'clock? And what happens at 12 o'clock when those customers are pulling from the grid? There isn't anybody that's an island. And they might get there, but not yet. So, but we have these programs that were designed for different purposes. It wasn't until maybe 2018 that GHG reduction was incorporated into electricity planning for the state. We now have a goal of 100% GHG free. And, but we have a lot of legacy programs that are building up that are causing all these cost impacts. San Diego doesn't want to go so far as to say, just get rid of them. Their response was, well, let's put them over on the taxpayers over there. And that doesn't fix the cost analysis and review and the deep dive that needs to happen to clean up the system and see if we really have a 21st century regulatory model that works for 21st century priorities. I actually submit that there are some things going in, and I shouldn't say this one. I'm even starting to wonder if actually depending, one size fits all doesn't fit, but I suspect there are many places where you would achieve a great deal of GHG reduction, more than rooftop solar does, by helping people put in air source heat pumps and taking them off the gas system. That analysis, to my knowledge, does not happen in this state.
Can you explain what a heat pump is quickly for
A
people?
heat pump is electric, and a heat pump, unlike an HVAC system in Sacramento, we have I'm not on an air source heat pump. I'm a fan. The gas system comes in, it heats up, and you get really hot air immediately in your house. Air source heat pumps suck the outside. He can answer better. He's an engineer. Suck the air from outside, and they heat it or cool it depending on whether you need air conditioning or heat, and then bring it in the house. They are far more energy efficient. They use a lot less electricity at a lower cost. Well, you don't use electricity too much on the gas side, but it is a cheaper means of providing heat and air, and it eliminates your use of gas in your home. Did I kind of cover it? Bill can clean up for me.
No.
Okay.
I still haven't heard.
I'm an attorney, not an engineer, so you gotta watch.
I just still haven't heard, like, okay, how can we make the cost of electricity more affordable soon? Like, people are suffering from high bills. I mean, we're talking about kind of things that might take many, many years to form a public utility.
Just getting to the absolute bottom line, it's called cost of capital proceedings at the commission, in that one of the reasons what's fueling this breakneck undergrounding, conductors, transmission to the boondocks to hook into the same solar panels we could put on our homes, is the utilities make a tremendous amount of profit doing this. It's called, they would get a return on equity as if this were a high-risk business. It's a no-risk business. So they're getting 10, 11% guaranteed return on equity for a no-risk business, and they're throwing money at it. Sempra just sold off $10 billion of their unregulated infrastructure division and said they're going to pour more money into the investor-owned utilities. Why? Because they're printing money. They're getting paid tremendous money for something that has no risk in it. And you want to do something fast, support Protect Our Communities Foundation in this cost of capital proceeding. Get people behind it to say, drop the cost of capital from 9, 10, 11% to 5%. What no-risk businesses are supposed to get. And that will damp down the breakneck spending and rate increases that we're seeing. And that's something we can do right now. Those are ongoing proceedings.
I want to jump to the audience questions because there's a lot of good ones rolling in. Iris, could you come up and read your question? Iris is our Price Fellow. She is, each year, the Aaron Price Fellows program selects 40 kind, inquisitive, open-minded ninth graders from a pool of 300 applicants for a 3-year journey. They go behind the scenes to see how the cities function and explore the role of community members in shaping society. The program is a high school leadership experience started in 1991 by the Price family. Go ahead, Iris.
All right, so again, hello, my name is Iris Zonka. I'm a senior at University City High School. And thank you for outlining such a range of approaches to electricity affordability. What your discussion made clear to me is that San Diego's electricity challenge isn't only about lowering bills today. It's about building a system people can trust that is fair to low-income households and resilient in the face of climate and infrastructure costs. So question being, if your solution were adopted, what mechanism would ensure it delivers real affordability, not just in year 1, but 10 years from now, and who should be held accountable if it doesn't?
Nice. Thank you. Jack?
One of the ideas we had that I've heard in the discussions leading up to this is we get cap and trade credits into the system, and it reduces overall the bills by about 9%. One of the things we could do would be to take those credits shift them from the higher income, middle income ratepayers where it has a marginal effect, and actually push them down to the lower income folks and give them a much bigger discount on their bills to make it more affordable. I think those are the kinds of programs we ought to be looking at long term.
Bill?
Well, I want to say I agree with Jack that a municipal utility, a public electric utility should not be a city department. I'm sold on that. But there are numerous structures that can be used to firewall it from city council, from the mayor. As far as rate reduction, and to answer the question about how do you assure that you actually achieve what you set out to achieve, is that part of that, as I mentioned, the governance of a public electric utility to assure represents a good cross-section of capable people, good mission statement, and you have to have oversight as well of that, a credible body overseeing with the power to remove non-performing folks, so that if we say day one we'll drop rates 20%, year 10 it's 30 or 35%, and that's the path we're on. We make those commitments, we've got to deliver on them. We've got to have a structure available that if we don't deliver on them, we get a new boss to run that show and stay on track.
Kelly? Thoughts?
It's hard, but you got to do something. You got to start somewhere, and we've got a mess in the regulatory structure and oversight of the IOUs at a time of tremendous challenges. And I have to admit, I mean, I threw out this extreme. I didn't throw it out. I've actually had this on my mind for several months and had some conversations with leaders in Sacramento about this. And it is a Herculean task. And the layers and the depth of the dynamics, and let me tell you, the first problem, the vested interests. You've only heard here today about IOU corporations. I'm not going to even begin to give you the list of corporations that are here in California and across the country advocating for all this great green. Well, yeah, it's green in more ways than one. And those dynamics make it very, very difficult to make great change especially the way we need it, because they've gotten used to things being subsidized to a great degree. For California, not nationally, I'm not worried about the tax credits going away. I do think it's tragic that middle of that grants and contracts and planning has been done, and to pull the plug midstream is just bad.
You mean federal grants for renewable energy?
Federal and credits and projects in the mix. We're going to have a terrible reliability problem. You just can't pick up a new project and put that one away and start over here. But California didn't need those tax credits in order to go green, because we had done it already. We've got the mandates and we're going to do it. And we've driven a market at lower costs. And what they have to be willing to do is try to let go of micromanaging. You know, there's this dynamic. Okay, you set the goals, you told them what you had to do. Well, now you're trying to control every input down here too. No, relax. Let them come forward with the contracts, put it into competitive procurement, which we have in this state, and see what the markets will develop without them relying on these constant subsidies on the backs of ratepayers. That's really a lot of what's built into these bills, is subsidizing, and we needed them at one time. My point is, do we really need them now? Now, and San Diego sees it, but you see, they don't want to take it on. That's why they said, well, put all these charges over on the other side. Well, if you take them out of the IOUs and you send it over to on the tax side, then you got to start sending that same kind of money down to the POU customers too, because general fund taxpayers can't just pay for IOU stuff. Not that I would advocate doing it anyway, but they see the problem. They agree there's a problem.
So give it to the market. Yeah. Jack, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, I'll just say one, I'm going to take all my other hats off and I'll put on my hat as a developer. I develop buildings, houses, apartments, commercial buildings up and down the state. It used to take me a year to get a solar permit. It takes 3 years to get a solar permit now. If this state is really serious about solar energy, We've got to get into the system and clean it up. It shouldn't take longer than 6 months to get a solar permit. And the payback as a result, it used to be the payback was 3 to 1. You get your solar system would be paid back with savings in 3 years. It's 9 years now. California is a complete bureaucratic mess when it comes to either housing or any of these issues that require a permit. We ought to put it in the code. 6 months to get a permit. If you're really serious about solar, we ought to put some time limits on this.
Isn't that payback in part due to the solar customers getting less back for their, so that's kind of the opposite of what you were saying.
I mean, it's just the social engineering that's going on with all these bills. Instead of having a real electric bill, we've got a social/electric bill that we're paying for.
Okay. So you guys are both kind of in favor, Kelly and Jack, of sort of gutting these sort of programs and subsidies that the state regulators require and sort of cut the fat that way?
I am not questioning the need to provide support for some customers. I'm not going after low income affordability issues. I'm saying that there is a lot of stuff in there. There's a lot of room, and that it needs to go in, and it needs a cleanup and an overhaul. And you could go in just to, I don't know what the percentage is, just into the rates and see what's still there, that the mandates on the IOUs and relief.
But those things, a lot of those things belong in the general fund. They don't belong on an electric bill. That's the problem. If you keep on tagging things and loading things onto the electric bill, they're just going to get more expensive.
Bill?
Yeah, I want to ask the audience a question. Do you consider electricity an essential public good? You need it to live? Okay. SDG&E has been breaking profit records year after year after year. This isn't just mandates that they're adhering to. They're breaking profit records. First 6 months of this year, profits went up 11.5% on an essential public good. That's one of the reasons I like public power.
So follow-up question for you, Bill. This is from the audience. Can you clarify? So in order for public power to work, you're going to have to basically buy the infrastructure from SDG&E, which I've done some reporting on that, and both of you guys threw out wildly different numbers for how much that would cost. But there's reasons for that, right? But how would you guys go ahead and actually procure or get that infrastructure from SDG&E? How would you guys buy that?
Yeah, let me mention this. And I'm going to put this on the press a little bit. In March of 2024, SDG&E came out with total propaganda about 9 billion or 14 billion, and just threw it against the wall. Everybody in town reported it like news. Nobody asked the question, why did the municipalization studies have it at 2 or 2.5? These guys threw out 10, 14. You look at this 7-page study, and the consultant's covering his backside saying, SDG&E fed this to me. And some of the numbers were the same as ours. The asset value, maybe 2 billion. We're all agreeing it's about 2 billion. But then they just make it up out of whole cloth. Press reports it, and we have 2 very different numbers bouncing around town. So part of it is on maybe the fact that we don't have as much coverage as we used to, but that doesn't work. You can't have the utility who has a very strong vested interest in the status quo being given a green light to just throw stuff against the wall and create confusion with exactly what it was for.
Well, how is the price set then? Don't they sell their equipment and they set the market rate, or what? Is there a different way to do that?
Evaluating how much the assets are worth is a pretty straightforward, simple thing. The municipalization study that was done by NewGen for the distribution system that we're talking about, that's going to be 1.7 billion. NewGen did the same assessment in 2020 under Faulkner, 1.6 billion. I mean, these are the same numbers. The one good number SDG&E had in that over-the-top estimate was the asset value, 2.3 billion. We're all agreeing on the asset value. But this extra stuff, like one claim was made that, well, if you go municipal, there will be no payments for the, what are the fees that we pay? The franchise fees that everyone pays, that the city relies on, the general fund relies on, where public utilities pay what are called payments in lieu of taxes. In that ballot initiative, it said, we're going to match those fees. But that assessment said, city's going to lose 4 billion. That's wrong, but it just sits. In another case, again, the municipalization And remember, we paid $2 million for that phase 1 study. If SDG&E paid $2,000 for that 7-page back of the envelope, I'd be surprised. But in that study, they said, well, we're going to have to rearrange the wires. We're going to have to rearrange the wires to keep all the wires in San Diego if we're going to be a separate utility. I said, well, that's $250 million. 3 years before, they said it's $200 million. Okay, 200, 250. SDG&E gins up this massive building project, transmission and distribution substations, had nothing to do with the municipalization study that SDG&E was embracing until the day they released that on the community.
So just quickly though, so let's say that a number is decided. I don't know who does that. Maybe it's in a court proceeding
There's a
potentially.
lot of sales. So, I mean, a transformer costs what a transformer costs.
It'll be in a court. It'll be
It would go to court, I assume.
Yeah, condemnations.
Yeah, it eventually land in court and then that would get the price. Let's say the price gets, thank you. The price gets set. So how does public power pay for the infrastructure?
Good question. So the way these public utilities work generally is they're enterprise funds, meaning they pay for themselves through the bills that you pay to them. They're firewalled from the city. They have no impact on the city's budget, however direction it goes. Their responsibility is you collect in rates what you need to do your job. And they have their own credit rating, separate from the city of San Diego, separate from other entities. And that's how they're firewall financially.
Just for the record, since I was responsible for those utilities, the enterprise funds, the city council controls those funds. That's why we're having this ridiculous debate about a 61% rate increase over the next 4 years. The city council makes that call. The city council will make the call on these on electricity. If you want reliable electricity, then you vote for the city to control it, and you drive that electricity just like you drive the dang roads in the city, or you listen to the waste management misrepresentations. The city is going to control it. I mean, that's the way it has to be. They either appoint people to control.
Bill, do you have a follow-up? Do you want to explain how the governance would work in your mind?
There are numerous structures. You can be a city department. There are many that are city departments. There are others that are districts. There are others that are special districts. In fact, in the municipalization study, which there are a lot of good elements in that municipalization study, except a couple of bad assumptions that drive down the benefits of it. But there are multiple structures. And in this city, I agree with you, it should not be a city department. I mean, the city, the community just doesn't have trust in the city's ability to manage something complicated. So it can't be that.
But it has to be some kind of governmental agency. They don't come out of, as you say, whole cloth.
You're right.
Ultimately, the city of San Diego as a corporation is going to have to decide how the utility is going to be governed. And trust me, when the unions get involved in this, and the unions with this particular city council, it'll be a city utility. It'll be a city department run by the city of San Diego. And that's, unfortunately, Bill, the political reality of what we're dealing with in this city right now.
There was a question from the audience that was upvoted quite a bit. So regardless of private or public, how do we decrease the cost of transmission and distribution lines, poles, etc.?
Can't touch transmission because it's all federally controlled. It's very difficult. Except that I forgot. My apologies to the legislature, the governor, and especially Senator Becker and Assemblymember Petrie Norris this year. Because they did try to work on the cost of transmission, and in SB 254 that has been signed by the governor, there is an effort to work on publicly financed transmission using iBank and using several moving parts. Good effort. It's going to take a long time for any of that to come to fruition. It takes a long time to build transmission. It takes 8 to 12 years probably. So we're quite a ways down the road before we would see the benefits of that. But they are working on that. That takes it out of the utility rate base and out of FERC jurisdiction, depending on how it comes out in the wash.
It's a complicated issue. I mean, I don't think there's an easy answer. My answer is unload all the social, non-related electric charges off the bill and make sure solar pays their fair share of the maintenance of the grid. Those are unpopular decisions.
And what percent of the bill is the public purpose programs you keep referencing?
24.
That's not the
Percent.
case though, because wildfire isn't a public purpose program. It's a infrastructure.
Well, if you pull that chart back up, I would, on the solar itself, the shift is 14%.
So you're basically saying if you get rid of all those programs, SDG&E would be able to drop their rate 14%.
Yeah, I think overall you could drop a 20.
Kelly's motioning something.
It's a shift. It's a shift. It's not a drop. The costs there don't go away, but they would be reducing some customers' bills because, and this is primarily on the residential side, not the non-residential side, because the costs are managed separately to some degree, at least as rooftop solar is concerned. And so those customers that currently don't have solar would see a modest reduction in their bill to some degree. And yes, maybe as high as 14 to 20%, depending. There is no such thing as a real average customer. I don't know who they are. But there would be a reduction for those that don't have solar. There would be an increase for those who do have solar. And that's not across the board if it's newer solar, because it depends on when you got it and all kinds of other things. So the costs don't go away. It just shifts. Remember the balloon.
Bill?
Yeah, just a kind of a strategic fundamental point about transmission lines. We now have another multi-billion-dollar transmission line proposed for San Diego, the Golden Pacific Power Link, son of the Sunrise Power Link. And I was an expert witness in the Sunrise Power Link proceeding 2007 and 2008. A little known fact is we actually won with the administrative law judge's proposed decision. They said thumbs down on Sunrise, cheaper, better, faster to do it locally. And then Michael Peavy swooped in and in a political move approved that transmission line. But my point is, do you think that a solar panel sitting in Imperial County or up in the high desert, that it has to be delivered, or at least that power, to San Diego over a $2 or $3 billion transmission line? Do you think that solar power is cheaper than just putting a solar panel on your roof? What do you think? Probably not. And it's not. And so this debate about the problem with Kelly's point here is that the starting point is we're going to do it with transmission. Just where do we put the transmission? How do we do it with the transmission? There are always two choices. And the local choice is a better choice.
Kelly's in pain. Did you want to follow up?
It's very hard to have these conversations with, in a state of this size, with so many people, so many building configurations, so much different geography, topography, weather. Remember, solar only works at noon. And how do those people get electricity at 8 o'clock at night? And so you do still there. And you know what? I tell people, someday we might be going down the street and changing out a battery for our house like we change out the propane tank for the barbecue. And then we'll be really able to island and get rid of all the stuff. But in the meantime, there are a lot of people whose homes are too old. Their roofs are crap. Are we going to start? But well, we've been in the fire area. They're talking about starting to help people replace their roofs because it's always the older ones that are still shaking, whatever, that burn first. But it's just, you still have to continue to provide electricity. And our system went topsy-turvy from the last century to this one. We used to build gas plants and things close to load. I remember when I was a kid growing up in Chula Vista, I thought that plant that was out on the bay at near F Street in Chula Vista, I thought that was a ship. My dad was in the Navy. Oh, guess what? No, it was like a 700 or 800 megawatt gas plant. It's gone now. We used to build those plants close to load, and so we didn't need transmission. Now, when we build things like wholesale, big solar, big storage, big battery storage, big wind turbines, you have to run the transmission out to get it. And with technology and building limitations, cost limitations, roof limitations, and on, we're still for the foreseeable future going to have to run transmission out to get that power to bring it into urban areas where the population and greatest demand is. There is not enough space, and people scream bloody murder when you start to put those things in urban, beautiful areas. So so yes, this will work to some degree. Some of the utilities that provide that have to address wildfire safety in remote areas. Remember, I said they have to go out and serve them wherever they are. They are starting to do isolated generation out in some of those areas, so they can take the distribution lines out that traverse these areas and put everything at such great risk. So there is change coming, but there are still people that are going to flip that switch and they still need it, and it's not going to go on or near their house.
Yeah. And I think SDG&E's just got the green light to build another transmission line, right? Connecting.
They have approval from the California Independent System Operator, but that application has not yet been submitted to the Public Utilities Commission, which would have to run it through the ringer.
Which I'm sure you're going to fight on here.
This is that 8 to 12 year process. The ISO identifies demand and they say, here's what we're going to need. And then entities, the utilities, or usually, although they're trying to do competition, okay, we got to plan it. And that's where then they plan and they find, and then they go to the PUC and then they go to FERC, and it's just, it's a long process.
Yeah, really quickly, Bill.
Just a quick point about the politics of all this is that a shout out to Arnold Schwarzenegger when he was governor, because he kicked off the Million Solar Homes program. But little known fact, he was a big proponent of putting solar on warehouse rooftops, big rooftops, he said, hey, flying over the Central Valley towns, and I'm looking at all these warehouses and they got no solar, let's get solar on it. And the interesting thing about Schwarzenegger was the utilities didn't have their hooks in him. He came out of nowhere. He was already a star in his own right, kind of calling the shots on this. And for a brief moment in time in 2009, the biggest utility scale solar project in California was 500 megawatts on warehouse rooftops in the Inland Empire. And everybody was on board. It said, this is great. It's going to be cheaper than going out in the desert because we don't have to build transmission. And it rolled for 1 year until Schwarzenegger left office. And then quickly the plugs were basically pulled on that. But it was just so interesting to be in that situation where for a moment in time, the state seemed committed to doubling down on building its solar at utility scale on large buildings.
Go ahead, Kelly.
They still try to do a lot of it, and it is a really good idea. However, when you put rooftop solar panels and at the end of the circuit on the distribution system, it cannot be dispatched. If you put electricity on this roof, you cannot dispatch it to Chula Vista. That's because this is a distribution grid, and it goes from, and the wholesale side, it goes from the big power plant to the transmission line, AC, alternating current. You can send that electricity out there to serve remote areas. Across 14 states, we're interconnected, and Baja California and Canada. You can generate electricity in Imperial Valley and send it up to British Columbia or Mexico or wherever. But when it gets to the distribution grid, the power goes one way and it goes to that switch on the wall. And so if I have power on my roof here or at my home down the street, it's going to float in the neighborhood. It does reduce the amount of power that has to be sent to that neighborhood, but it can't serve remote areas. So you still have that challenge.
It goes both ways. It does not go one way. Yeah.
So
We
we,
can't get past the substation.
Yes, it can. It can go right up through the substation.
so we'll have to have a side battle on this, answering this question, but,
The city won't go anywhere.
there you go. So we have a few minutes left. You all need to vote for your favored solution. If you guys could each just kind of really one last punch and summarize your solution and what it would do to make electricity more affordable, please keep it in that context. Oh, one more. Yeah, Jack, go ahead. If you could just say one more time, like what your solution is and how it would make electricity more affordable.
Well,
Final thought.
I think the solution is focus on the utility and figure out how we can lower the bills through San Diego Gas and Electric. That's where I think the effort ought to be. I think you're jousting with windmills when you talk about moving it over to the city. Even if it happened, I think it would be a disaster. One thing I want from my electricity is reliability. When I turn that switch on or that computer on, I want it to work. I don't think it's going to work if we send it over to the city. Let the city stick to its knitting. They're doing a lousy enough job with that. Never mind adding another utility to the bundle of things that they need to operate.
Bill?
I do see electricity as an essential public good. I don't think it ever should have been in the hands of a private monopoly. The UT a couple of years ago said the California Public Utilities Commission is a captured agency by the utilities. The UT was correct. I do a lot of work at that commission. And I think that I understand what Jack is saying. I live here. I understand all of the trauma we have with our public services in this town. But I do know that SDG&E is breaking profit records year after year after year. I know they're doubling down to accelerate on that profit breaking track. I just think it's fundamentally the wrong way to go. It's got to be a public service. We got to figure out these problems with our city. That's a different but related issue. But it's an essential public good, and it should be in public hands.
Thank you. Kelly?
I'm kind of a little bit of everything here because some of what SDG&E suggests is good, fixing the NEM dynamics. And there is a lot of stuff buried there that can be more efficient. I don't agree with going over to the taxpayer side. That doesn't fix anything. That just makes the problem grow even more. Municipalization, give it a try. But by the time you go to the eminent domain and the PUC and the attorneys, it's going to be a heavy lift. So we got to do something else in the meantime. And in the meantime, let's try to clear the deck and really focus on the cleanest electricity for the buck and try to stem and see where does it make sense? Where does it make financial sense to actually do investments? Right now, they'll go put rooftop solar on people's homes and it's not even clear that that has a benefit to the grid or anything. It's just, this is good, and I support of helping folks who are in need with reduced electric rates. And so I don't want to misstate this, but we're putting a lot of rooftop solar on the homes of low income people. Why? We can't afford to put it on everybody's house, and everybody's house isn't situated to manage it. So why does that, so we're doing a lot of things that don't have an apparent GHG value, have an extraordinary expense, and aren't helping us achieve our goals. And so I just hope that they can start clearing the deck and dig in and pay more attention to what's really embedded in all of those rates. I bet they could get a significant amount of rate relief out of there if they could have the time to dig in.
2:15 on the dot. Thank you, guys.
Let's hear it for our panel, our moderator and panelists. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. The next session starts in 15 minutes. Help us spread the word. Go to voicesandiego.org. Thank you to everybody who dived into this kind of complexity. We embrace complexity. We embrace the difficult discussions. And I really appreciate everybody who cares about it as much as we do. Thank you. See you at the next.